You don't understand that boy. That homeless kid you just kicked. He's the one who saved my life." The words exploded through the freezing Montana air like a gunshot. 200 Harley engines fell silent. The corrupt deputy's boots stopped mid-swing above Ethan's ribs. And in that moment, everything changed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we dive into how a forgotten 17-year-old boy ended up protected by the most feared motorcycle club in America, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. This story has more twists than a mountain highway, and you're going to want to hear every single word. And drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Ethan's story travels. Because what happened under that bridge wasn't just a rescue, it was a resurrection for both of them. The sleet hit Ethan Cole's face like tiny knives, each frozen droplet, a reminder that nature didn't care whether he lived or died. Neither did anyone else. "Keep moving, he whispered to himself, his breath creating small clouds in the December darkness. Just keep moving. His sneakers, 2 sizes too big, held together with duct tape and hope squelched through the mud beneath the abandoned railroad bridge. This wasn't shelter. Not really, but it was hidden, and hidden meant safe. Safe from the deputy, safe from the system, safe from people who looked at homeless kids and saw problems instead of human beings. Ethan's stomach cramped with hunger. 3 days since his last real meal. The gas station manager had caught him trying to pocket a granola bar yesterday, had grabbed his wrists hard enough to leave bruises. "I should call the cops," the manager had snarled. Ethan had run. He always ran. Now crouching in the darkness under the bridge, he pulled his threadbare jacket tighter and tried not to think about his mother. Tried not to remember her voice. Tried not to wonder if she'd be ashamed of what he'd become. The silver necklace she'd given him, the only thing he had left of her, pressed cold against his chest. "You're stronger than you know, baby," she'd whispered the night before the cancer took her. "Promise me you'll survive." He'd promised. 14 years old and terrified, he'd promised. 3 years later, he was still trying to figure out how. The roar of an engine cut through his thoughts. Headlights swept across the bridge above, illuminating the falling sleet in harsh white columns. Ethan pressed himself deeper into the shadows. Traffic meant witnesses, and witnesses meant questions, and questions meant... The screech of tires shattered the night. Metal grinding against metal, a sickening crunch. Then the unmistakable sound of a vehicle smashing through the highway barrier. Ethan's head snapped up just in time to see the black SUV cartwheel through the air in terrible slow motion, spinning like a coin flipped by a giant's hand. It hit the churning river with a sound like thunder nose first, and the current immediately began dragging it downstream. Toward him. "Oh, God," Ethan breathed. He scrambled to the riverbank, his heart hammering. Above him on the bridge, voices shouted. Footsteps pounded. But nobody was moving. Nobody was helping. They were just watching. The SUV was sinking fast, the raging current pulling it under. Through the driver's side window, Ethan could see a massive silhouette. A man, not moving. "Somebody help him," Ethan screamed up at the bridge. "Are you crazy?" a woman's voice shot back. "That water's freezing. Emergency services are on the way." "He doesn't have that long." The SUV lurched, tilting further into the current. Water was already pouring through the shattered rear window. In maybe 90 seconds, it would be completely submerged. Ethan's hands shook. Every rational thought in his head screamed at him to stay put. He couldn't swim well. The water was near freezing. He was already weak from hunger and sickness. But that silhouette in the driver's seat wasn't moving. And Ethan Cole had made a promise to his mother. He kicked off his oversized sneakers and dove. The cold hit him like a physical blow, driving the air from his lungs in a shocked gasp. The current grabbed him immediately, trying to sweep him downstream, away from the sinking vehicle. Ethan fought against it, his arms and legs already going numb, his muscles screaming. "Stupid," he gasped. "Stupid, stupid, stupid." His hand caught the door handle. The SUV lurched again, and suddenly Ethan was underwater, tumbling, his lungs burning. He couldn't tell which way was up. The current spun him like a leaf in a tornado. His shoulder slammed into something hard, the vehicle's roof, and pain exploded down his arm. But he held on. Fighting blind, Ethan pulled himself along the SUV's frame until his hands found the driver's side door. It was jammed. Locked or bent from the impact, he couldn't tell. Through the window, barely visible in the darkness, the man's face was slack, unconscious, drowning. Ethan's vision started to blur. His lungs were screaming for air. He had maybe 15 seconds before his body gave up and inhaled water instead. He slammed his elbow against the window. Once, twice. The third time, something in his shoulder tore and white-hot agony shot through his arm, but the glass spiderwebbed. The fourth hit shattered it. Water rushed in, equalizing the pressure. Ethan grabbed the man's jacket, leather heavy, covered in patches he couldn't read, and pulled. The guy was huge, 260, maybe 270, all of it muscle and bulk. He wasn't budging. Ethan's chest convulsed. His body was trying to breathe, trying to kill him. No, he thought desperately. Not like this. Not after everything. His fingers found the seatbelt buckle. Pressed. Nothing. Pressed again harder, and it finally released. The man's body shifted forward. Ethan grabbed him under the arms and kicked backward with everything he had left. They moved. 6 inches? A foot. Ethan's vision was going dark at the edges. His movements were getting sluggish. Hypothermia and oxygen deprivation fighting to see which would kill him first. But he kept pulling. The current caught them, spinning them away from the SUV. Ethan couldn't feel his legs anymore. Couldn't feel his arms. Just the massive weight of the man dragging him down, down, down. His head broke the surface. Air. Sweet, freezing, beautiful air. Ethan gasped and choked and gasped again. His arms locked around the unconscious man's chest. The current was still pulling them downstream away from the bridge. Ethan could hear sirens now. See red and blue lights reflecting off the water. Here, he tried to shout, but his voice came out as a wheeze. We're here. His strength was gone. Used up. He couldn't hold on much longer. His mother's necklace, he felt it slip from his neck, the clasp broken in the struggle. Watched it disappear into the dark water. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered. Then his hand touched mud, river bottom, shallow water near the bank. Using the last fragments of his strength, Ethan dragged the man onto the muddy shore and collapsed beside him. His entire body was shaking violently. His shoulder screamed with every breath, but the man's chest was moving, rising and falling, alive. You better be worth it, Ethan mumbled through chattering teeth. Footsteps crashed through the underbrush. Flashlights, voices. Over here, I found them. Get the paramedics down here now. Jesus, is that? Check his patches. Oh shit, that's a Hell's Angel. Ethan tried to push himself up, but his arms wouldn't cooperate. A flashlight beam hit his face, blinding him. Kid, stay down. You're in shock. We've got you. No. Ethan's teeth were chattering so hard he could barely form words. No cops. No hospital. You just pulled a man from a freezing river. You're going to the hospital. Can't. Panic cut through the hypothermia fog. If they took him to the hospital, there would be questions. Social workers. The system. They'd put him back in foster care, and he'd rather die. I can't. A paramedic was bending over the unconscious man. This one's stable, breathing on his own. Pulse is strong. The paramedic's flashlight swept across the man's leather jacket, catching on the patches. Holy hell, that's Rex Calloway. That's Titan. Who? Another voice. Hell's Angels enforcer, one of their top guys. What the hell was he doing out here? But Ethan wasn't listening anymore. While the paramedics focused on the unconscious biker, while the crowd gathered on the bank above them, while sirens wailed and lights flashed, Ethan Cole did what he'd learned to do best. He disappeared, rolling into the darkness, crawling into the brush, letting the night swallow him whole. Behind him, someone shouted, "Hey, where'd the kid go?" But Ethan was already gone, limping into the frozen forest, his shoulder on fire, his body shutting down from cold and exhaustion. He made it maybe a quarter mile before he collapsed. When Rex Titan Calloway woke up in the hospital, the first thing he felt was rage. He hated hospitals, hated the smell, hated the weakness they represented, hated the memories they dragged up from a childhood he had spent 30 years trying to forget. Easy, Rex, a familiar voice. Diesel, one of his brothers from the club. You took a hell of a swim. Rex's throat was raw. What happened? You don't remember your bike got clipped by some tweaker in a pickup, sent you and your SUV right through the barrier into the Little Blackfoot River. Diesel leaned forward. You should be dead, brother. The memories came back in fragments. The impact, the spinning, the freezing water filling his lungs, the certainty that after 38 years of cheating death, the river was finally going to collect. How'd I get out? Diesel's expression shifted to something Rex had rarely seen on his brother's scarred face: wonder. Some kid pulled you out, homeless teenager. Witnesses say he dove in while everyone else just stood there watching, dragged your big ass to shore and saved your life. Rex's hand moved to his chest, expecting to find his leather jacket. Instead, his fingers closed around something small and cold. A broken necklace. Silver. Delicate. Not his. The kid's, he asked. Must be. Paramedics found it tangled in your jacket. That and this. Diesel held up a muddy wallet. Kid's ID was in your pocket, must have fallen out during the rescue. Rex took the wallet. Inside was a battered Montana ID card. The photo showed a thin, blonde kid with blue eyes that looked about 100 years old. Ethan Cole. Rex read, 17. Yeah, and get this, he bolted before the paramedics could check him out. Just vanished. Been homeless for about 3 years, according to the local cops. No family. In and out of foster care before he ran for good. Rex stared at the photo, at the kid who'd risked his life to save a complete stranger. A Hell's Angel. The kind of person most people cross the street to avoid. Find him, Rex said. What? You heard me. I want the club to find this kid. Rex's voice was rough, but there was steel underneath. Nobody risks their life for me and disappears into the night. We owe him. Diesel straightened. You want me to call the boys? I want you to call everyone, every chapter within 500 miles. I want this kid found, not to scare him, not to threaten him, to thank him. Rex looked down at the broken necklace in his hand, and to make sure he's okay. Rex, he ran from the paramedics. Kid clearly doesn't want to be found. I don't care what he wants. He saved my life. Rex's jaw tightened. Nobody's ever done that before. Not without wanting something in return. I need to know why. Diesel nodded slowly. I'll make the calls. And Diesel, tell the boys to be gentle. This kid's been through enough. Last thing he needs is 200 bikers scaring the shit out of him. After Diesel left, Rex lay back against the hospital pillows and studied the ID photo again. 17 years old, homeless, alone, and brave enough to dive into a freezing river to save a stranger's life. It reminded Rex of someone, himself, at that age, before the club found him, before he learned that family didn't have to mean blood. Where are you, kid? He whispered to the photo. And why the hell did you save me? 3 miles away, Ethan Cole shivered in an abandoned hunting cabin he'd found in the state forest. His shoulder was swollen to twice its normal size. His skin had taken on a grayish tint, and every breath felt like swallowing razors. Pneumonia, he'd had it before. Knew the signs. Should have stayed on shore, he muttered through chattering teeth. Should have let him drown. Not your problem. Not your... But even as he said it, he knew it was a lie. He jumped because that's who his mother had raised him to be. Because in a world that had taken everything from him, he still had his promise, his choice. Nobody else had jumped. But Ethan had. And now he was going to pay for it with his life, freezing to death in a cabin that smelled like mold and mouse droppings, completely alone. I kept my promise, Mom, he whispered into the darkness. I survived. Just not sure for how much longer. His eyes drifted closed. He didn't hear the distant rumble of motorcycle engines beginning their search. Didn't know that 200 bikers were combing every street, every bridge, every shelter in 3 counties. Didn't know that the man he'd saved had just declared him family. All Ethan knew was cold and darkness, and the growing certainty that this time maybe surviving wasn't enough. 2 days later, Deputy Frank Calloway found Ethan behind the Safeway trying to steal food from the dumpster. Well, Frank said, his hand dropping to his nightstick. If it isn't the little rat I've been looking for. Ethan tried to run, but his legs buckled. The pneumonia had him. Fever, chills. He could barely stand. Please, Ethan gasped. I'm just hungry. Shut up. Frank grabbed him by his injured shoulder, and Ethan screamed. You know what the rules are. Vagrants get moved along. I've been nice. I've been patient. But you keep coming back. I've got nowhere else to go. Not my problem. Frank twisted his grip, and Ethan's vision whited out with pain. Should have thought about that before you became a drain on society. Let him go. The voice came from behind them, deep, rough, dangerous. Frank turned his hand, moving to his gun, and froze. Standing in the alley were 5 men. Big men, covered in leather and tattoos, the kind of men Frank had been taught to fear his entire life. Hell's Angels. This doesn't concern you, Frank said, trying to sound authoritative. It came out shaky. The largest of the bikers, a man with a scarred face and cold eyes, stepped forward. The kid, let him go. Now. This is police business. That kid's name is Ethan Cole, and we've been looking for him for 2 days. The big biker's voice dropped lower, so I'll say it one more time. Let him go. Frank released Ethan's shoulder. Ethan collapsed against the dumpster, gasping. We're taking him, the biker said. You got a problem with that, you take it up with our legal team. You can't just watch us. 2 of the bikers moved forward, carefully lifting Ethan. He tried to fight to pull away, but he had no strength left. It's okay, kid. One of them murmured. We're friends. Rex sent us. Who? Ethan managed. The guy you saved. He's been looking for you. The biker's expression softened slightly. You're safe now, I promise. Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to run, but his body had finally given up. As they carried him toward a waiting van, the last thing he heard was Frank's voice, angry and impotent. You can't do this. And the big biker's response came in absolute, we just did. No. Ethan woke in a bed, not a cot, not a pile of cardboard, an actual bed with clean sheets and a warm blanket and a pillow that didn't smell like mildew. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. Then the pain in his shoulder reminded him he wasn't. Easy, kid. Don't try to move yet. Ethan's eyes snapped open. Sitting in a chair beside the bed was the biggest man he'd ever seen, 6'4" easy, built like a linebacker, covered in tattoos that disappeared under a black t-shirt. His face was hard-weathered by violence and time, but his eyes were gentle. Who are you? Ethan croaked. Rex Calloway, though most people call me Titan. The big man leaned forward. You saved my life, kid. Pulled me out of that river when nobody else would. The memories flooded back. The crash, the freezing water, the desperate struggle. You were drowning, Ethan said simply. Yeah, I was. Rex's voice was rough with emotion. And you damn near died getting me out. Pneumonia, dislocated shoulder, hypothermia. Doc says another hour and you wouldn't have made it. Where am I? Clubhouse. Our doctor's been looking after you. Don't worry, he's legit. Did tours in Afghanistan as a combat medic before he joined up. Ethan tried to sit up and Rex gently pressed him back down. You're not going anywhere for a few days, kid. Need to let that pneumonia clear up. You can't keep me here. Can't we? Rex's expression remained calm. Kid, you saved my life. That means something to us. Means everything, actually. I don't want your money, Vasek. The words came out more defensive than Ethan intended. I didn't do it for... I know you didn't. That's exactly why I've been looking for Yippo. Rex pulled something from his pocket. Ethan's broken necklace, now carefully repaired. This was your mom's, wasn't it? Ethan's throat closed up. He couldn't speak. Lost it in the river. My boys found it, caught in some rocks downstream. Rex held it out. Thought you might want it back. Ethan's hand shook as he took it. The last piece of his mother, the last proof she'd existed, the last proof he'd been loved. Thank you, he whispered. Rex nodded. Doc says you'll make a full recovery. Shoulder's gonna need physical therapy, but you're young, you'll heal. And then what? You let me go back to the streets? No, Rex's voice was firm. Then we figure out what comes next. Together. I don't understand. Kid, I was you? 20 years ago, I was sleeping under bridges and running from cops in foster care. I know what it's like to be invisible, to have everyone look through you like you're not even human. Rex's jaw tightened. But somebody saw me, gave me a chance, gave me a family. The Hells Angels. Yeah, we're not what people think. We're not heroes, but we're not monsters either. We're brothers. And brothers don't let brothers die alone in the cold. Ethan's eyes burned. I'm not your brother. Not yet, but you could be. Rex stood. Look, I'm not asking you to join the club. You were 17. Too young, and that's not what this is about anyway. This is about making sure you've got what you need. Food, shelter, medical care, school if you want it. Why? Because you jumped when nobody else did. Rex's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Because you risked everything for a stranger. Because that kind of courage deserves to be protected, not wasted. Because, he paused, because that's what my mother would have wanted someone to do for me. Ethan stared at this massive, terrifying biker whose eyes held ghosts Ethan recognized. What happened to your mother? Ethan asked quietly. Cancer. I was 15. Rex's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Died in a county hospital with me in foster care 50 miles away. They wouldn't even let me go to the funeral. The silence stretched between them, two abandoned boys, 20 years and 1,000 miles apart, connected by the same wound. I'm sorry, Ethan said. Me too, kid. Me too. Rex moved toward the door. Get some rest. We'll talk more when you're stronger. And Ethan, yeah, you're safe here. Nobody's gonna hurt you. Nobody's gonna throw you back on the streets. That's a promise. After Rex left, Ethan lay in the warm bed, his mother's repaired necklace clutched in his hand, and for the first time in 3 years, he cried. Not from pain, not from fear, from the strange, unfamiliar sensation of being seen, of mattering, of being saved in return. Outside the room, 200 Hell's Angels waited to meet the skinny, blonde kid who'd taught them all what real courage looked like. And in that moment, neither Ethan nor Rex knew it yet. But everything had already changed. Forever. The sound that woke Ethan the next morning wasn't an alarm or a gentle voice. It was laughter. Real laughter. The kind that came from deep in someone's chest and spilled out without permission. The kind Ethan hadn't heard directed at anything he was part of in years. He opened his eyes to find 3 massive bikers standing in the doorway of his room arguing about breakfast. I'm telling you, the kid needs protein, eggs, bacon, real food. He's 17 diesel, not a bodybuilder. Get him some pancakes. Both of you are idiots. Kid just had pneumonia. He needs soup. Ethan pulled the blanket higher, suddenly aware of how exposed he was. These men could crush him without trying. Their arms were bigger than his legs. Their presence filled the entire room. He's awake, the one called Diesel said, noticing Ethan's open eyes. Morning, kid. You hungry? Ethan's stomach answered before he could, growling loud enough that all 3 bikers grinned. Pancakes it is, the second one said. I'm Wrench, by the way. This ugly bastard is Diesel, and the one who thinks soup is breakfast is Doc. I am a doctor, Doc said defensively. I know what recovering patients need. You're a medic who took some online courses, Wrench shot back. Still more medical training than you got from YouTube. Ethan watched them bicker, his mind struggling to process what was happening. These were Hell's Angels, the kind of men the news warned you about, the kind foster parents whispered about when they thought he wasn't listening. But they were arguing about pancakes. You don't have to feed me, Ethan said quietly. I can leave. I don't want to be trouble. The laughter died instantly. Diesel moved into the room, his heavy boots thudding on the wooden floor. He pulled up the chair Rex had used the night before and sat down with surprising gentleness. Kid, let me explain something. You saved our brother's life. You risked everything for him when you didn't have to. That makes you family. And family doesn't leave hungry. I'm not family. I don't even know you. Not yet, Doc said from the doorway. But that can change, if you let it. Wrench disappeared and returned 5 minutes later with a plate stacked so high with pancakes it looked like a cartoon. Bacon hung off the edges, syrup pooled in a small lake on the side. Eat, he commanded, setting it on Ethan's lap. All of it. You're skinny as a rail. Ethan stared at the food. When was the last time someone had made him breakfast? When was the last time someone had made him anything? His hands shook as he picked up the fork. The first bite hit his stomach like a small miracle. The second made his eyes water. By the third, he was eating so fast he barely tasted it. Slow down, Doc said gently. Food's not going anywhere. But Ethan couldn't slow down. Couldn't stop. Because food always went away. Everything always went away. Diesel exchanged a look with the others that Ethan couldn't read. Something sad. Something angry. Nobody's taking it from you, kid, Diesel said quietly. There's more in the kitchen. As much as you want. Always. That word always made Ethan's throat close up. He forced himself to swallow, to breathe, to not cry in front of these strangers who were being kinder to him than anyone had in years. Why are you doing this? The question came out broken. Because Rex said so. Wrench answered simply. And when Titan says jump, we ask how high. But why does he care? The three bikers looked at each other again. Some silent communication passed between them. That's his story to tell, Doc finally said. But the short version, he knows what it's like, and he's not going to let another kid go through it alone. A phone buzzed. Diesel pulled it out, read the screen, and stood abruptly. Rex is on his way, wants to talk to the kid. He was just discharged from the hospital an hour ago, Doc protested. He should be resting. You tried telling Titan to rest. Diesel headed for the door. Kid finish eating. Rex will be here in 10. After they left, Ethan sat alone with his plate of pancakes and the growing realization that his life had just taken a turn he couldn't have predicted in 1,000 years. He'd saved a stranger, and somehow that stranger was saving him back. The question was why, and whether Ethan could trust it. Rex arrived exactly 10 minutes later, moving slower than he had the night before. His ribs were taped, his face was bruised, but his eyes were clear and focused entirely on Ethan. You finished breakfast. Ethan nodded, suddenly unable to speak. Rex pulled up the chair and sat with a barely suppressed wince. Doc says your shoulder's healing clean. Pneumonia's responding to antibiotics. You'll be back on your feet in a week. And then what? Then we figure out what you want. What I want doesn't matter. Never has. Rex's expression hardened. Who told you that? Everyone. Foster parents, social workers, teachers, cops. Ethan's voice was flat. I'm just a problem waiting to age out of the system. You're 17 years old. You're not a problem. You're a kid who got dealt a shit hand. Same difference. No, it's not. Rex leaned forward and Ethan instinctively pressed back against the headboard. Rex noticed and stopped moving. Sorry, didn't mean to crowd you. But listen to me, Ethan. What happened to you losing your mom, the foster system, living on the streets, that's not your fault. And it sure as hell doesn't define who you are. You don't know who I am. I know you jumped into a freezing river to save a stranger. I know you nearly died doing it. That tells me everything I need to know. Ethan looked away. I didn't have a choice. Everyone had a choice. 20 people on that bridge. You were the only one who jumped. Rex's voice softened. Why? Because nobody else was going to. The words hung in the air between them. Rex was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of old pain. When I was 15, I watched my mother die in a hospital. Cancer. Same as yours. He paused. I was in foster care 3 hours away. They wouldn't let me visit. Said it would be too disruptive to my placement. By the time they told me she was gone, she'd already been buried. Ethan's chest tightened. I'm sorry. I ran that night, stole my foster dad's truck and just drove. Made it maybe 40 miles before I crashed it into a ditch. Rex's jaw tightened. Woke up in juvie, spent the next 3 years in and out of the system. Group homes, lockup, streets. I was angry at everyone, at the world, at myself for not being there when she needed me. What changed? I met a man named Rapper, president of the Montana chapter. Found me trying to steal his bike. Rex's expression shifted to something almost like a smile. Should have killed me. Instead, he bought me breakfast, asked me what I was running from, and when I told him everything, you know what he said? Ethan shook his head. He said, kid, you can keep running from the pain, or you can turn around and use it. Make it mean something. Make her death mean something. And then he gave me a choice. Keep living like a ghost or join a family that would never abandon me. The club. Yeah, the club. Rex met Ethan's eyes. They saved my life. Gave me purpose. Brothers, a reason to get up far every morning, and now I'm offering you the same choice. I'm not joining a biker gang. Good. You shouldn't. You're 17. You should be in school, getting your diploma, figuring out what you want to do with your life. Rex shifted in his chair. But while you're doing that, you need a place to stay. Food, support. We can give you that. In exchange for what? Nothing. Ethan laughed bitterly. Nobody gives something for nothing. We're not nobody. We're family. And family doesn't keep score. You don't know me. How can I be family? Rex pulled something from his pocket, Ethan's repaired necklace. He held it up, letting it catch the light. Your mom gave you this, told you to be strong, to survive. Rex's voice was rough. Well, you did. You survived 3 years on the streets, but surviving isn't the same as living, kid. And you deserve to live. Ethan's vision blurred. He blinked hard, refusing to cry again. What if I mess up? What if I steal something or break something or... Then we deal with it. Together. Rex stood, moving toward the door. Think about it. No pressure. You've got time. But know this, you're safe here, and you're wanted here. That's not going to change. After Rex left, Ethan lay back against the pillows and stared at the ceiling. Wanted. When was the last time anyone had wanted him? The door opened again. Ethan expected Diesel or Doc. Instead, a woman walked in, maybe 50, with steel gray hair pulled back in a ponytail and eyes that missed nothing. You must be Ethan. I'm Sarah, Rex's old lady. Ethan blinked. His what? Wife, partner, whatever you want to call it. She sat in the chair and studied him with the intensity of someone who'd seen too much life to be fooled by appearances. How you holding up? I don't know. Honest answer, I appreciate that. Sarah crossed her arms. Rex tell you his sob story yet? He told me about his mom. Did he tell you that when I met him, he was 22 years old and picking fights with anyone who looked at him wrong? That he was so angry at the world he couldn't see straight? Ethan shook his head. He was a mess, self-destructive, broken. The club gave him structure, but he still had all that rage eating him alive. Sarah's expression softened. Then one day he saved a kid from drowning in Lake McDonald, 12-year-old boy who'd fallen through the ice. Rex jumped in without thinking. Nearly died doing it. Ethan's breath caught. Just like you jumped for him. Yeah. Sarah leaned forward. You know what that kid's parents did? They tried to give Rex money, tried to pay him off, like what he'd done could be bought. And you know what Rex did? What? He told them the only payment he wanted was for them to be better parents, to actually see their kid, to make sure he knew he mattered. Sarah's eyes locked onto Ethan's. That's who Rex is. That's who we all are. Broken people who learn that family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. It's about jumping when nobody else will. I don't know how to be part of a family. Neither did any of us. We learned. Sarah stood. Give it time, kid. You might surprise yourself. She left and Ethan was alone again with his thoughts. 3 days passed. Ethan's strength returned slowly. The pneumonia faded. His shoulder hurt less. And every morning someone brought him breakfast. Every afternoon someone checked on him. Every evening Rex stopped by to talk. Not about anything important. Just talk. About motorcycles. About Montana weather. About stupid movies and good books and whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Normal things. Things Ethan had forgotten existed. On the 4th day, Doc cleared him to leave the room. Ethan stood on shaky legs and followed him down a hallway that smelled like leather and motor oil and coffee. They emerged into a massive common room, and Ethan froze. 30 bikers filled the space. Big men, scarred men, men who looked like they'd seen violence and dealt it back tenfold. Every single one of them turned to look at him. Ethan's first instinct was to run. Then Diesel stood up from a poker table and grinned. There he is, the kid who saved Titan's ugly ass. The room erupted in applause, actual applause. Ethan stood there stunned as 30 Hells Angels clapped and whistled and shouted his name like he'd just won a championship. Speech, someone yelled. Leave the kid alone, Rex called from across the room. He was sitting on a worn couch, his arm around Sarah. Can't you see you're scaring him? We're not scary, Wrench protested. We're friendly. You're terrifying, Sarah corrected. Sit down and give him space. The bikers settled back into their activities, poker pool conversations, but their eyes kept drifting to Ethan with something that looked like respect. Rex gestured for Ethan to join him on the couch. Sorry about that. They're excited. We don't get many heroes around here. I'm not a hero. Tell them that. Rex nodded toward the room. Half these guys have been in firefights. The other half have stared down cops in rival clubs and worse, and every single one of them says what you did was the bravest thing they have ever seen. It was stupid. Brave and stupid aren't mutually exclusive. Rex handed him a soda, but it was also right, and that matters. Ethan sipped the soda and tried not to stare at the room full of bikers who kept sneaking glances at him like he was something precious. "Rex," a voice called from the door. "We got a problem." The man who entered was older than the others, maybe 60 with a gray beard and hard eyes. He wore a leather vest with more patches than anyone else. "What kind of problem, Reaper?" Rex asked, standing. Reaper's eyes flicked to Ethan, then back to Rex. "Deputy Holloway, he's filed a complaint. Says we kidnapped the kid." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "He what?" Diesel's voice was dangerous. "Says we took Ethan against his will, interfered with a police investigation. He wants the kid back in custody." Rex's expression went cold. "Over my dead body." "Rex," Sarah started. "No," Rex cut her off. "That bastard had his hands on Ethan. Was hurting him. We got witnesses. And Holloway says the kid's a runaway, a ward of the state. Says we're harboring a fugitive." The room went silent. All eyes turned to Ethan. "Is that true?" Rex asked quietly. "Are you a runaway?" Ethan's throat was dry. "I left my last foster home 3 years ago. They reported it, but after I turned 16, they stopped looking." "Officially stopped looking," Reaper corrected, "but legally you're still in the system until you're 18, and Holloway knows it." "So what do we do?" Wrench demanded. Reaper looked at Rex. "We could fight it, get lawyers involved, but that takes time. And in the meantime, the court could order Ethan back into foster care." "No," the word exploded from Ethan. "I'm not going back. I'd rather live on the streets." "You're not living on the street," Rex said firmly, "and you're not going back into the system." "Then what?" Rex and Reaper exchanged a long look. "There's one option," Reaper said slowly. "Legal guardianship. If someone petitions the court to become Ethan's legal guardian and the kid agrees, the state might allow it." "Who?" Ethan asked. Both men looked at Rex. "No," Sarah said immediately. "Rex, we can't." "Why not?" Rex's voice was calm. "Because you barely know him. Because the state will never approve a Hell's Angel as a guardian. Because he needs someone, and I'm volunteering." Rex turned to Ethan. "What do you think, kid? You don't want me to try?" Ethan couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This man, this stranger he'd pulled from a river, was offering to become his legal guardian. "You don't have to," Ethan managed. "I'm not your responsibility." "No, you're not. But I'm making you my responsibility anyway." Rex's expression softened. "Look, I'm not gonna be a perfect guardian. I work weird hours. I've got a record. I'm part of a motorcycle club that most people fear. But I promise you this, I will show up. I will keep you safe. And I will never, ever abandon you." Tears burned Ethan's eyes. "Why?" "Because 20 years ago, someone did the same for me. And because you jumped when nobody else would." Rex held out his hand. "What do you say?" "Oh," Ethan stared at the offered hand. This was insane. Accepting help from a biker gang, trusting a man he'd known for less than a week, believing that maybe, just maybe, someone actually gave a damn whether he lived or died. But what was the alternative? Back to foster care, back to the streets, back to being invisible. Ethan reached out and took Rex's hand. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." The room erupted in cheers so loud they shook the windows. And for the first time in 3 years, Ethan Cole felt something he'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. But outside the clubhouse, Deputy Frank Holloway sat in his patrol car staring at the building, arguing with cold fury. He'd been humiliated, made to look weak, and all because some homeless punk had gotten lucky. "Enjoy your little victory," Frank muttered, pulling out his phone. "This isn't over, not by a long shot." He dialed a number he wasn't supposed to have, one that belonged to someone in Child Protective Services who owed him a favor. "Yeah, it's me. I need you to flag a case. Ethan Cole, 17, currently being held by the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club." Frank's smile was vicious. "I want an emergency removal order. Tonight." The voice on the other end hesitated. "That's highly irregular." "I don't care. The kid's in danger. You want that on your conscience." A pause, "Then I'll see what I can do." Frank hung up and stared at the clubhouse. "Let's see your biker buddies protect you from the law, kid," he said softly. "Let's see how tough they are when the courts get involved." Inside the clubhouse, Ethan was surrounded by bikers who were already arguing about how to convert the spare room into a proper bedroom. He needs a desk for homework and a good mattress. Kid's been sleeping on cardboard. We should paint the walls. What's your favorite color, kid? Ethan stood in the center of it all, overwhelmed by the sheer force of their caring. Rex watched from the couch, Sarah's hand in his. "You sure about this?" she whispered. "Never been more sure of anything in my life. The court's gonna fight it, Holloway's gonna fight it, and Ethan's gonna have moments where he doesn't trust this, where he thinks we're gonna abandon him like everyone else." "I know. And you're still willing to do it." Rex looked at the skinny blonde kid who'd risked everything to save him, who'd survived 3 years of hell and still had the courage to hope. "He jumped when nobody else would," Rex said quietly. "Now it's my turn to jump for him." Sarah squeezed his hand. "Then I guess we better get ready for a fight." "We're Hell's Angels," Rex said with a small smile. "Fighting's what we do best." But neither of them knew that the fight was coming sooner than they thought, or that Deputy Holloway had just lit a fuse that would explode in less than 12 hours, or that when it did, Ethan would have to make a choice that would change everything. Again. The pounding on the clubhouse door came at 2 in the morning. Ethan jerked awake in his new bed, the one the bikers had assembled in 4 hours flat, arguing the entire time about whether the headboard should face east or west, and his first thought was that he'd dreamed everything. The rescue. Rex. The family. Then he heard Rex's voice, low and dangerous, coming from the hallway. "Stay in your room, Ethan. Lock the door." Ethan's heart hammered. He crept to the door instead, pressing his ear against it. More pounding, harder this time. "This is Deputy Holloway with Child Protective Services. We have a court order for the immediate removal of minor Ethan Cole. Open this door or we'll open it for you." Ethan's blood turned to ice. They'd found him. Of course they had. He'd been stupid to think he could hide, stupid to think anyone would actually fight for him. "Let me see the paperwork," Rex's voice carried through the door. Calm, too calm. "Here, emergency removal order, signed by Judge Patterson 2 hours ago. The minor is to be placed in temporary state custody pending a full investigation into his living situation. At 2 in the morning, you couldn't wait until a reasonable hour. The judge deemed it urgent. Now step aside or I'll have you arrested for obstruction." Ethan's hands shook as he unlocked his door and stepped into the hallway. Rex stood at the front entrance, still dressed like he'd never gone to bed. Behind him, Diesel Wrench and a dozen other bikers formed a wall of leather and muscle. "Kid, I told you to stay in your room," Rex said without turning around. "I'm not hiding." Ethan's voice cracked. "This is my fault. I shouldn't have. You didn't do anything wrong." Rex's tone left no room for argument. "Holloway, this order is garbage and you know it. You got a judge to sign it in the middle of the night without notification to the minor or anyone representing his interests. Any lawyer worth a damn will get it thrown out by morning. That's for the courts to decide. Right now, I'm taking the boy. Over my dead body." The words hung in the air like a loaded gun. Holloway's hand moved to his weapon. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Calloway. I've got backup on the way. You really want to start a war over some runaway?" "He's not some runaway. His name is Ethan Cole, and he's under my protection. You don't have legal authority. I filed for emergency guardianship 3 hours ago. It's with the county clerk. Until a judge rules otherwise, this kid stays with me." Ethan's breath caught. Rex had filed papers at 11 at night. Holloway's expression twisted into something ugly. "That filing means nothing. My order supersedes. Your order is based on false pretenses." A new voice cut through the tension. Sarah pushed through the wall of bikers holding a laptop. "Says here Ethan's in immediate danger, that the Hell's Angels are holding him against his will, that he's been denied medical care and education." That's what my investigation revealed. "Your investigation is 4 hours old. You want to explain how you conducted a thorough investigation in 4 hours? In the middle of the night?" Sarah's eyes were steel. "Or should we talk about the fact that witnesses saw you assaulting Ethan behind the Safeway 3 days ago, that you twisted his already injured shoulder hard enough to make him scream?" Holloway's face went red. "That's a lie. I've got 3 signed statements saying otherwise. plus security footage from the store's back camera. Sarah smiled without warmth. You want to take this to court? Let's take it to court. Let's put your conduct under oath. Let's talk about your pattern of harassment toward homeless youth. Let's see how that plays out. The deputy's jaw worked. Behind him, Ethan could see two more patrol cars pulling up outside. This isn't over, Holloway said quietly. Not by a long shot. That boy belongs in the system, and I'm going to make sure he gets there. You do what you have to do, Rex said. So will we. Holloway turned to leave, then stopped. His eyes found Ethan over Rex's shoulder. You think they care about you, kid? They're using you, making themselves look good. The second the cameras stop rolling, you'll be right back where you started. That's how people like this work. People like this, Diesel's voice was dangerous. You mean people who don't beat up teenagers? I mean criminals pretending to be heroes. Holloway's smile was vicious. Enjoy your little fantasy while it lasts, boy. Reality comes for everyone eventually. He left. The patrol cars followed, and Ethan stood in the hallway, shaking so hard his teeth chattered. Rex closed the door and turned. His expression softened when he saw Ethan. Hey, come here. Ethan couldn't move. His legs had turned to water. Rex crossed the distance instead, putting his hands on Ethan's shoulders, gentle, steady. You're okay. He's gone. You're safe. He's coming back. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. He's going to take me. Put me back in foster care. I'll disappear into the system and you won't be able to... Stop. Look at me. Rex waited until Ethan met his eyes. That's not going to happen. I don't care what strings Holloway pulls or which judges he pays off. You're not going anywhere. You can't promise that. Watch me. Sarah joined them, closing her laptop. We need to call Marcus, now. Who's Marcus? Ethan asked. Our lawyer, Diesel answered. Best defense attorney in the state. Got half of us out of charges that should have stuck. Because you were innocent, Ethan asked. Because he's that good. Wrench grinned, but it faded quickly. Kid's right, though. Holloway's got connections. He got a judge to sign an emergency order in 2 hours. That's not normal. No, it's not. Sarah was already dialing, which means someone wants Ethan bad enough to break protocol. Question is why. The room went quiet as everyone processed that. I'm nobody, Ethan said. Why would anyone care where I am? You made Holloway look weak, Rex said quietly. In front of witnesses, in front of his community. Men like him don't forget that. So this is about revenge. Partially, but there's something else. Sarah held up her phone. Marcus, I need you at the clubhouse. Now, no, I don't care if it's 2 a.m. We've got a situation. She paused. How fast can you get here? Good. Bring everything you have on Deputy Frank Holloway. Everything. She hung up and looked at Rex. He'll be here in 20. What are we looking for? Diesel asked. Proof that Holloway's dirty. Because nobody goes this hard after a homeless kid unless there's something personal driving it. Sarah's expression was grim. And I want to know what. Ethan sank onto the couch, his mind racing. This was spiraling out of control. All he'd done was pull a man from a river. How had that turned into a war with a corrupt cop? I should just go, he said. Turn myself in. This isn't worth... Don't finish that sentence. Rex sat beside him. You're worth fighting for, Ethan. Don't ever think otherwise. You barely know me. I know enough. You know what you want to see, but Holloway's right. I'm just some kid, and people like me don't get happy endings. Sarah crouched in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. Listen to me. I've known Rex for 15 years. I've seen him fight for brothers, for territory, for respect. But I've never seen him fight like this. You know why? Ethan shook his head. Because when he looks at you, he doesn't see some kid. He sees himself, and he's not going to let you go through what he went through. None of us are. A knock at the door made everyone tense. Diesel checked the peephole. It's Marcus. The man who entered looked nothing like Ethan expected. Mid-40s, wearing jeans and a Montana State sweatshirt, carrying a messenger bag that had seen better days. He looked more like a college professor than a cutthroat lawyer. Someone want to tell me why I'm here at 2:30 in the morning? Marcus asked, setting his bag on the table. Rex explained. The river rescue, Ethan's situation, Holloway's vendetta, the emergency removal order. Marcus listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. "Let me see the order," he said finally. Sarah handed over the paperwork Holloway had left. Marcus read it twice, his frown deepening. "This is sloppy. Patterson signed it, which means Holloway called in a favor. Patterson owes him for something." Marcus looked at Ethan. "You ever had any run-ins with Holloway before the Safeway incident?" Ethan thought back. "He's hassled me a few times. Told me to move along, nothing major until that day." "What changed?" "I don't know. He just seemed angrier. Like he'd been waiting to catch me doing something wrong." Marcus pulled out a laptop and started typing. "I'm going to dig into Holloway's background, see what shakes loose. In the meantime, Rex, that guardianship filing was smart. It gives us legal standing to fight this." "How long before a hearing?" "Emergency hearing. I can probably get one scheduled for tomorrow afternoon, but that's cutting it close." Marcus looked at Ethan. "Kid, I need to ask you some hard questions. You up for that?" Ethan nodded, though his stomach churned. "Why did you run from foster care?" "Because it wasn't safe." "Define not safe." Ethan's throat tightened. "The last home I was in, the foster dad had a temper. Used his belt for discipline. I had bruises, told my caseworker. She said I was exaggerating, said I needed to be more grateful." The room went completely silent. "After that, I ran. Figured the streets were better than getting hit." Marcus typed rapidly. "Do you remember your caseworker's name?" "Linda Vance." More typing. Then Marcus went very still. "Interesting." "What?" Rex asked. "Linda Vance's sister is married to Frank Holloway." The temperature in the room plummeted. "That son of a bitch," Diesel breathed. "This is personal." "Looks like it." Marcus kept typing. "Ethan reports abuse, makes the sister-in-law look incompetent. Holloway takes it personally. Starts targeting the kid. And when the kid ends up protected by the most feared motorcycle club in the state, Holloway can't let it go." "So what do we do?" Wrench asked. "We fight dirty." Marcus's smile was sharp. "If Holloway wants a war, we'll give him one. But first I need to know everything. Every interaction Ethan's had with him. Every witness. Every piece of evidence that shows a pattern of harassment." "I've got footage from the Safeway," Sarah said, "and 3 witness statements." "Good. Get me more. I want a timeline of every time Holloway interacted with Ethan over the past 3 years. Every detail matters." The bikers scattered, making calls, pulling up contacts. Within an hour, the clubhouse table was covered in paperwork, laptop screens glowing with research. Ethan watched it all, stunned. These people were going to war for him. Actual war. Against a cop. Against the system. "Why?" he asked Rex quietly. "Why risk all this?" Rex didn't look up from the police report he was reading. "Because it's right." "That's not a good enough reason." "It is for us." Rex met his eyes. "Ethan, you think we're doing this for you?" "We're not. I mean, we are. But it's bigger than that. Every single person in this room knows what it's like to be thrown away, to have the system fail them, to be told they don't matter." His voice roughened. "We're not letting it happen again. Not to you, not to anyone." Marcus stood abruptly. "I've got something." Everyone turned. "Holloway's been investigated twice for excessive force. Both times the complaints were filed by minors. Both times the investigations were closed with no action taken." "Who closed them?" Sarah asked. "Same person, Captain Thomas Brennan, Holloway's direct supervisor." Marcus pulled up a photo. "Who also happens to be married to Judge Patterson's sister." "Jesus," Wrench muttered. "It's a whole damn network. Small-town politics at its finest." Marcus's expression was grim. "This is bigger than just Holloway. This is about protecting their own. And if we go after Holloway, we're going after all of them." "So we don't go after Holloway directly," Sarah said slowly. "We go after the pattern. We show that the system failed Ethan repeatedly, that he was forced to run because the people meant to protect him were hurting him instead." "That could work," Marcus agreed. "But we need more than just Ethan's testimony. We need other victims, other kids Holloway's targeted." "I know where to find them." "Find them," Ethan said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. "The shelters, the drop-in centers. There's a whole community of homeless kids in this area. If Holloway's been doing this for years, they'll know. They'll have stories." Rex nodded slowly. "Can you reach them?" "Maybe." If they trust me, if they believe I'm not trying to get them in trouble. We'll go with you, Diesel said. Provide backup. No, Ethan shook his head. They won't talk if you are there. Bikers scare them. Authority scares them. It has to be just me. Absolutely not, Rex said immediately. Holloway's looking for you. You walk out that door alone, he'll grab you. Then we're stuck. The room fell silent as everyone struggled with the impossible problem. Then Wrench spoke up. What if he's not alone? What if someone goes with him who doesn't look like a threat? Like who? Sarah asked. Like you. Sarah blinked. Me. You're not a biker. You don't look like muscle. You're just a woman checking in on homeless kids. They might talk to you. Sarah looked at Rex, who was clearly torn. It could work, she said softly, and we need those statements, Rex. Without them, we're fighting with one hand tied behind our backs. Rex rubbed his face. I don't like it. I'm not asking for permission. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. This is happening. The question is whether you're going to spend the next few hours worrying or helping. Rex looked at Ethan. You sure you can do this? Ethan thought about all the kids he'd met on the streets over the past 3 years. Kids with stories like his. Kids who'd been hurt by the people meant to protect them. I have to try. Okay, Rex stood, but you take a phone. You check in every 30 minutes, and at the first sign of trouble, you run. Understood. Ethan nodded. Marcus stood as well. I'll prep the emergency hearing. We're going before Patterson whether he likes it or not. And I'm going to request a different judge review the removal order. Can you do that? Diesel asked. Not normally, but given the family connections we've uncovered, I can argue conflict of interest. Marcus packed up his laptop. This is going to get ugly. Everyone needs to be prepared for that. We're Hell's Angels, Wrench said with a grim smile. Ugly is our specialty. As the clubhouse erupted into activity, bikers making calls, Sarah gathering supplies, Marcus filing motions on his laptop. Ethan stood in the center of it all and felt something shift inside him. These people were fighting for him, really fighting, not because they had to, not because they were getting something out of it, but because they decided he mattered. The phone in Rex's pocket buzzed. He pulled it out, read the screen, and his expression went dark. What? Sarah asked. Text from Reaper. He's got eyes on Holloway. Rex showed them the message. Deputies parked outside the women's shelter on 4th Street, watching, waiting. He knows, Ethan breathed. He knows that's where I'd go. Then we go somewhere else, Sarah said. There are other shelters, other places kids gather. But the ones with the best information will be at that shelter. That's where most of the long-term homeless kids end up. Ethan's mind raced. We need a distraction, something to pull Holloway away. I'll do it, Diesel volunteered immediately. I'll take a few boys and make some noise on the other side of town. Lead him away. That could get you arrested, Marcus warned. Then you'll bail us out. Diesel grinned. Wouldn't be the first time. Rex considered it. You'd need to be loud enough to be worth investigating, but not so loud you actually break any laws. Please, I've been towing that line my whole life. Sarah grabbed her jacket. Then let's move. We've got maybe a 3-hour window before dawn. After that, the streets get busy and everything gets harder. Ethan felt his heart hammering as they headed for the door. This was really happening. They were really doing this. Ethan, Rex called. Remember what I said? First sign of trouble. I run. I know. Ethan turned back. Rex, thank you for all of this. Rex's expression softened. Thank me when it's over. When you're safe and Holloway's the one looking over his shoulder. You really think we can win this? I think we don't have a choice. Rex clapped him on the shoulder. Now go. Find me evidence that buries that bastard. As Sarah and Ethan headed out the back door to her car, Diesel and 5 other bikers roared out the front on their motorcycles' engines, screaming in the quiet night. What are they going to do? Ethan asked as Sarah pulled onto the road. Create chaos. Start a fight outside the bar. Wasabi on that fire. Make enough noise that Holloway has to respond. Sarah's hands were steady on the wheel. Buy us time. And if it doesn't work, then we improvise. We're good at that. They drove in silence for a few minutes before Sarah spoke again. You know he's never going to let you go, right, Rex? Even if this goes bad, even if the courts rule against us. He'll fight until there's nothing left to fight with. Why? Ethan's voice cracked. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. Sarah pulled the car over abruptly and turned to face him. Listen to me very carefully, Ethan Cole. You are not nothing. You are a 17-year-old boy who survived 3 years on the streets alone, who dove into a freezing river to save a stranger, who kept his humanity when the world tried to beat it out of him. Her eyes shone. That's not nothing. That's everything. Ethan's vision blurred. I'm scared. Good. Fear keeps you smart, but don't let it make you small. Sarah reached over and squeezed his hand. You're part of this family now, and we protect our own. Always. Her phone buzzed. A text from Diesel. Package delivered. Holloway's on the move. You've got 20 minutes. Sarah put the car back in gear. Ready? Ethan took a breath. Thought about all the kids still out there. Still suffering, still invisible. Yeah, he said. Let's go. They pulled up to the shelter 15 minutes later. The building was dark except for one light in the office. Sarah killed the engine. How do you want to play this? She asked. I go in alone first. Let them see me. Then I'll bring you in once they're comfortable. You've got 15 minutes before we need to move. Make them count. Ethan climbed out of the car and walked toward the shelter side entrance. The door was unlocked. It always was for kids who needed refuge in the middle of the night. Inside the common room was empty except for 3 figures huddled on the worn couches. One of them looked up as Ethan entered. Holy shit, Ethan? It was Marcus, not the lawyer, but a kid Ethan had known from the streets. 16, rail thin with a scar over his left eyebrow from a fight he'd lost. Hey, Marcus. Dude, we heard you were dead. Someone said you drowned in the river. Almost did. Ethan moved closer. I need your help. All of you. The other 2 kids sat up. One was a girl named Riley, maybe 15. The other was a boy Ethan didn't recognize. What kind of help? Riley asked warily. I need you to tell me about Deputy Calloway, about what he's done to you. The temperature in the room dropped. Why? Marcus's voice was flat. Because he's trying to destroy my life, and I'm fighting back. But I can't do it alone. Fighting back, Riley laughed bitterly. Against a cop, you're insane. Maybe, but I've got people helping me. A lawyer, witnesses, evidence. I just need proof that I'm not the only one he's targeted. The 3 kids exchanged looks. And what do we get out of this? The unknown boy asked. Justice, maybe, and the chance to make sure he doesn't do this to anyone else. Justice, Marcus stood abruptly. There's no such thing. Not for people like us. We're disposable. Always have been. Then prove me wrong, Ethan said quietly. Help me prove that we're not disposable. That what happened to us matters. Riley stood too. Calloway broke my wrist last year. Said I was resisting arrest. I was trying to protect my stuff. I've got a recording of him threatening me, the other boy said. Told me if I didn't leave town, he'd make sure I ended up in juvie for a crime I didn't commit. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, he put me in the hospital. Said I fell, but everyone knew. Nobody cared. Ethan felt rage building in his chest. I care, and the people helping me care. Will you talk to them? Go on record. We could lose our spots here, Riley said. The shelter can't protect us if we make enemies of the cops. I know, and I'm not asking you to do anything you're not comfortable with, but if you're willing to fight, I promise you won't be fighting alone. Marcus looked at the others. Some silent communication passed between them. Okay, he said finally, we'll talk, but if this goes sideways, if Calloway comes after us, then you run to the clubhouse, and 200 Hell's Angels will stand between you and him. Riley's eyes widened. You're with the Angels. Long story, but yeah, I'm protected. And if you help me, you will be too. The door opened behind Ethan. Sarah stepped in her hands, visible, her expression gentle. Are these the friends you mentioned? She asked Ethan. Yeah, they're willing to talk. Sarah pulled out her phone. Then let's get this recorded. And let's make damn sure Deputy Calloway regrets the day he decided homeless kids didn't matter. For the next 20 minutes, Sarah interviewed each kid while Ethan stood watch at the window. Their stories were heartbreaking, consistent, damning. By the time they finished, Sarah had enough evidence to bury Calloway 3 times over. This is good, she said, saving the recordings. This is really good. Marcus the lawyer, Marcus is going to love this. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Rex. Diesel's in custody. Disorderly conduct. Calloway's at the station processing him. You've got 10 more minutes before backup arrives. We need to move, Ethan said. Sarah stood. Thank you, she told the three kids. What you just did took real courage. Will it matter? Riley asked. Really? It will if we win. Sarah met each of their eyes. And we're going to win. As they headed back to the car, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Power. Not over others, but over his own story, his own life. For 3 years he'd been a victim, a ghost, a problem. But now he was fighting back. And he wasn't alone. They were 3 blocks from the clubhouse when the red and blue lights appeared in Sarah's rearview mirror. No, she breathed. No, no, no. Ethan's chest tightened. Is it Calloway? Sarah checked the mirror again. Can't tell, but we're being pulled over. Don't stop. Just drive. Ethan, I can't outrun a police car. And if I try, they'll arrest us both. Her hands were white-knuckled on the wheel. Let me handle this. Don't say anything unless they ask you a direct question. She pulled over, killed the engine, and they waited. The officer who approached wasn't Calloway. It was a younger deputy, maybe 30, with nervous eyes that kept darting to Sarah's Hells Angels support patch on her jacket. License and registration, he said, his voice tight. Sarah handed them over without argument. Is there a problem, officer? Your taillight's out. Which one? Driver's side. Sarah twisted to look. That light was working when I left an hour ago. Well, it's not working now. The deputy's eyes shifted to Ethan. Who's the kid? My nephew. I'm giving him a ride home. At 4 a.m. He called, said he needed a pickup. I came. Sarah's voice remained calm. Is that illegal? The deputy's radio crackled. Ethan couldn't make out the words, but he saw the officer's expression change. Harden. I need you both to step out of the vehicle. On what grounds? Sarah asked. The vehicle matches the description of one involved in a possible kidnapping earlier this evening. Sarah's jaw tightened. That's ridiculous. This is my car. I've owned it for 6 years, and there's no kidnapping. Step out of the vehicle now. Sarah looked at Ethan. Her eyes said, stay calm. They climbed out. The cold night air hit Ethan like a slap. His shoulder ached. His legs felt weak. Another patrol car pulled up, then another. And from the third car, Deputy Frank Calloway emerged. Well, he said, his smile vicious. Fancy meeting you here, Miss Calloway, and young Ethan, out for a late-night drive. We're not doing anything wrong, Sarah said firmly. Aren't you transporting a minor in state custody without authorization? That's a crime. Calloway moved closer to Ethan. Kid, you've got a choice to make. Come with me peacefully or make this hard on everyone. He's not going anywhere with you, Sarah said. That's not your decision. Actually, it is. My husband filed for emergency guardianship until a judge rules, otherwise Ethan stays with us. Your husband's filing is meaningless. I have a court order. Calloway pulled it from his pocket, waving it like a trophy. Signed by Judge Patterson himself. Now, kid, get in the car. Ethan's hands shook. He wanted to run, wanted to fight, wanted to disappear into the darkness like he'd done 1,000 times before. But Sarah had asked him to trust her, to trust the family. I'm not going, Ethan said, his voice steadier than he felt. Not without a lawyer present. Calloway's expression darkened. You don't get a lawyer, boy. You're a minor. You do what you're told. Actually, he does have a right to legal representation. The new voice came from behind them. Marcus stepped out of a car that had pulled up silently. He was carrying a briefcase and wearing a suit that made him look 10 years older and infinitely more dangerous. Marcus Chen, attorney at law. I represent Ethan Cole. And if you attempt to remove him from protective custody without a hearing, I'll have you in front of a judge so fast you won't know what hit you. Calloway's smile didn't waver. Your client is a runaway in state custody. He doesn't have protective custody. Incorrect. Rex Calloway filed for emergency guardianship at 11:43 p.m. The filing was accepted by the county clerk at 11:57 p.m. That filing grants temporary protective custody pending a judicial review. Marcus pulled out his phone showing a timestamped document, which means unless you have a superseding order signed after midnight, you have no legal authority to remove this minor. Calloway's jaw worked. Patterson's order supersedes. Patterson's order was signed at 1:15 a.m. Our filing predates it by over an hour. Marcus stepped forward. Now, unless you want to be sued for unlawful detention, wrongful arrest, and violation of due process, I suggest you step away from my client." The other deputies exchanged nervous glances. One of them whispered something to Holloway. Holloway's face went red. "This isn't over." "No, it's not. Emergency hearing is scheduled for 9 a.m. We'll see you there." Marcus gestured to Ethan. "Get in my car. Sarah, you too. We're leaving." "You can't just," Holloway started. "Watch me, an officer that broken taillight. My investigator will be examining it in the morning. If we find evidence of tampering, we'll be filing charges." Marcus's smile was razor sharp. "Have a pleasant evening." They climbed into Marcus's car and drove away, leaving Holloway standing in the street, fury radiating from every line of his body. Nobody spoke for 3 blocks. Then Sarah let out a shaky breath. "That was too close." "It was perfect," Marcus said. "He overplayed his hand, got aggressive in front of witnesses. That's all going in my filing." He glanced at Ethan in the rearview mirror. "You okay, kid?" Ethan nodded, not trusting his voice. "Did you get the statements?" Sarah held up her phone. 3 kids, all on record, all detailing a pattern of abuse and harassment spanning 3 years. Marcus's grin was feral. "Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Patterson won't be able to ignore this." "Patterson's in Holloway's pocket," Sarah said. "You said so yourself." "He is, but he's also up for re-election next year. And if this goes public, if the media gets hold of testimony showing he signed an order to return a kid to an abusive situation, his career is over." Marcus pulled into the clubhouse parking lot. "We're not just fighting for Ethan anymore. We're fighting to expose a corrupt system, and that's a fight we can win." Inside the clubhouse, Rex was pacing like a caged animal. He turned when they entered, his relief palpable. "You're okay." "Holloway pulled us over," Sarah said. "Tried to take Ethan." Rex's expression went murderous. "What?" Marcus stopped him, but it was close. Sarah moved to her husband, and he pulled her close. "We got the statements, though. 3 kids, all solid." Marcus was already setting up his laptop on the table. "I need to file a motion for a different judge. Patterson can't hear this case. The conflict of interest is too blatant." "Will that work?" Wrench asked. "It should, but we're on a timeline. The hearing's in 5 hours. If I can't get Patterson recused before then, we're walking into an ambush." Reaper entered from the back room, his expression grave. "We've got another problem." "What now?" Rex demanded. "Someone leaked the story to the local news. About Ethan saving you. About the club taking him in." Reaper held up his phone, showing a news website. "It's everywhere." Rex grabbed the phone and read. His face went pale. "What does it say?" Ethan asked. "That a homeless teenager rescued a Hell's Angel from drowning. That the club is now harboring the kid despite a court order to return him to state custody." Rex's jaw tightened. "They're framing us as vigilantes, saying we're using you for publicity." "That's exactly what Holloway wanted," Marcus said quietly. "Public pressure. Make the judge scared to rule in our favor." "So what do?" Diesel asked. "We fight back. On every front." Marcus stood. "Sarah, I need you to contact that reporter. Offer an exclusive interview. But only if they agree to include Ethan's side of the story. The abuse, the system failures, everything." "You want to put Ethan on camera." Rex's voice was dangerous. "I want to control the narrative before Holloway does." Marcus turned to Ethan. "Kid, I won't force you, but if you're willing to talk, to tell your story publicly, it changes everything." Ethan's heart hammered. He'd spent 3 years being invisible, and now they wanted him to stand in front of cameras. "What if I mess up? What if I say the wrong thing?" "Then you say the wrong thing, but at least you'll be heard." Marcus's expression softened. "Look, I know this is scary, but right now the only story people are hearing is Holloway's version. That you're a troubled kid who needs to be in the system. We need to show them who you really are. A scared homeless kid. A survivor. A hero. Someone who risked everything for a stranger." Sarah crouched beside him. "You think that doesn't matter? You think people won't care? People haven't cared for 3 years. Because they didn't know. They didn't see you." She took his hand. "Let them see you now." Ethan looked at Rex. "What do you think?" Rex was quiet for a long moment. "I think it's your choice. And whatever you decide, we'll support it. But if it was you," Rex's smile was grim. I'd burn their lies to the ground and dare them to rebuild. Ethan took a shaky breath, thought about Marcus Riley and the other nameless boy at the shelter, about all the kids still out there, still invisible, still suffering. Okay, he said, I'll do it. The reporter arrived at 6 a.m. Her name was Jennifer Park, and she worked for the state's largest newspaper. She set up a camera in the clubhouse common room, while Marcus briefed her on what she could and couldn't ask. No questions about club business, no questions about Rex's past. Focus on Ethan's story, the rescue, what led him to the streets, and the abuse he suffered at the hands of people meant to protect him. Jennifer nodded, making notes. Then she turned to Ethan. You ready? No, absolutely not. But he nodded anyway. The camera light turned red. Ethan Cole, you're 17 years old. 3 days ago, you jumped into the Little Blackfoot River to save a man from drowning. Can you tell me what was going through your mind in that moment? Ethan's mouth was dry. I wasn't thinking. I just saw someone who needed help, and nobody else was moving. The man you saved was Rex Calloway, a member of the Hells Angels motorcycle club. Did you know who he was when you jumped in? No, I just knew he was drowning. You nearly died yourself. Suffered pneumonia, a dislocated shoulder, hypothermia. Some people would call that heroic. Others might say it was reckless. What do you say? Ethan glanced at Rex, who gave him a small nod. I say it was necessary, because that's what we're supposed to do, right? Help each other, see each other, care whether someone lives or dies. His voice strengthened. That's what I was taught before everything fell apart. Tell me about your mother. And Ethan did. He talked about her laugh, her strength, the way she'd fought cancer for 2 years before it finally won, the way the system had separated them in her final days. They wouldn't let me see her, he said, his voice breaking. Said it would be disruptive to my foster placement. She died alone, and I never got to say goodbye. Jennifer's expression softened. After she passed, you were placed in foster care. What was that like? This was it. The moment he exposed everything. Some homes were okay. Some were terrible. The last one, Shaw, he swallowed hard. The foster father hit me, used his belt. I had bruises, told my caseworker. She didn't believe me, said I was exaggerating, making trouble. So you ran. I ran because bruises on the street heal. Bruises from someone who's supposed to protect you, those never go away. Jennifer leaned forward. You've been homeless for 3 years, living under bridges in abandoned buildings wherever you could find shelter. What was that like? Lonely, scary, cold. Ethan met the camera. But at least I was safe. At least nobody was hitting me. At least I had control over my own life, even if that life was just surviving day to day. And then you met Rex Calloway. I didn't meet him, I saved him, and then I ran because that's what I do. I survive. Ethan's voice hardened. But Rex found me, and instead of forgetting about me like everyone else, he decided I mattered. He and the club gave me food, shelter, medical care. They filed for guardianship. They fought for me. Some people say the Hells Angels are using you for publicity, that they're exploiting your story. Ethan felt anger surge through him. Then those people are wrong. The club saved my life, not just from the river, from everything. They saw me when I was invisible. They cared when nobody else did. And now the system that failed me for 3 years wants me back. He shook his head. Why? Because it looks bad that a motorcycle club is doing their job better than they ever did. Jennifer's eyes widened slightly. That's a strong statement. It's the truth. Deputy Holloway has been harassing me for months, harassing other homeless kids too. We have witnesses, recordings, evidence, but nobody cares because we're disposable. We're problems. We're not real people. Ethan's hands clenched. Well, I'm real, and I matter, and I'm not going back to a system that treated me like garbage. The room was silent except for the hum of the camera. Jennifer turned it off and sat back. That was powerful, Ethan. Really powerful. Will it help, he asked. It'll make people listen, and sometimes that's all you need. The interview aired at 7:30 a.m. By 8, Ethan's phone was blowing up with messages from numbers he didn't recognize. People offering support, sharing their own stories, calling for investigations into Holloway and the foster system. Marcus watched the social media feeds with growing satisfaction. It's working. Public sentiment is shifting. Patterson's going to feel the heat. Will it be enough? Rex asked. I don't know, but it gives us leverage. Marcus checked his watch. Hearings in 30 minutes. Time to go to war. The courtroom was packed. News cameras lined the back wall. Reporters filled the gallery. And sitting in the front row looking murderous was Deputy Frank Calloway. Judge Patterson entered, his expression unreadable. He was older than Ethan expected, maybe 70, with steel gray hair and cold eyes. All rise. The Honorable Judge Patterson presiding in the matter of the state versus Rex Calloway regarding emergency guardianship of minor Ethan Cole. Everyone sat. Patterson shuffled papers without looking up. I've reviewed the filings. Mr. Chen, you've requested my recusal. On what grounds? Marcus stood. Conflict of interest, Your Honor. Your sister is married to Captain Thomas Brennan, who supervises Deputy Calloway. Deputy Calloway's sister-in-law is Linda Vance, the caseworker who handled Ethan's previous placement. The connections create an appearance of impropriety. Appearances aren't facts, counselor. Request denied. Ethan's heart sank. Marcus didn't flinch. Then I moved to dismiss the emergency removal order on the grounds that it was obtained through false pretenses. The order claims Ethan is in immediate danger. We have evidence showing the opposite. Your Honor, the state's attorney, a sharp-faced woman named Anderson, stood. The minor is a runaway. He's been living with a motorcycle club known for criminal activity. That constitutes danger. The Hells Angels are not on trial here, Marcus shot back. And my client is not in danger. He's been receiving medical care, proper nutrition, and educational support. The only danger he faces is being returned to a system that failed him repeatedly. Patterson's expression hardened. Watch your tone, counselor. Apologies, Your Honor, but the facts are clear. Ethan Cole was abused in foster care. He reported it. The caseworker ignored him. He ran to protect himself. And now the state wants to force him back into that same system. The state wants to ensure the minor's welfare. Then the state should have assured it 3 years ago. Marcus's voice rose. We have testimony from multiple minors detailing a pattern of abuse and harassment by Deputy Calloway. We have recordings, medical records, witness statements, all of which paint a picture of systemic failure. Anderson stood quickly. Hearsay and character assassination. None of that is relevant to the guardianship question. It's entirely relevant. It shows why Ethan ran, why he doesn't trust the system, and why forcing him back into state custody would be harmful. Patterson banged his gavel. Enough. Both of you sit down. They sat. Patterson was quiet for a long moment and his eyes on the paperwork in front of him. Then he looked directly at Ethan. Son, stand up. Ethan stood on shaky legs, Rex's hand briefly squeezing his shoulder. You're 17 years old. In less than a year, you'll be a legal adult. You'll have the right to make your own decisions about where you live and who you associate with. Patterson's voice was stern. But right now, you're still a minor, and the law says the state has an interest in your welfare. Do you understand that? Yes, sir. Mr. Calloway has filed for emergency guardianship. If I grant it, you'll be living with him and his wife, subject to their rules, their authority. Is that what you want? Ethan looked back at Rex, at Sarah, at the bikers filling the gallery, at the family he'd never thought he'd have. Yes, sir, that's what I want. Why? Because they see me, because they care, because for the first time in 3 years I feel safe. Safe with a motorcycle club. Some might question that judgment. Some might question why the system let me get beaten in foster care and then called me a liar when I reported it, Ethan said quietly. But I'm not questioning it anymore. I know where I belong. Patterson's expression flickered. Something almost like respect crossed his face. Sit down. Ethan sat. Patterson turned to Anderson. Does the state have any evidence that the minor is in immediate danger with Mr. Calloway? Anderson hesitated. The Hells Angels have a documented history. I asked about evidence, not assumptions. No, Your Honor, not direct evidence. And you, Mr. Chen, do you have evidence supporting your claims of abuse in foster care? Sworn testimony from the minor. Medical records documenting injuries. Witness statements from other foster children in the same home. Patterson was quiet again. The courtroom held its breath. Here's my ruling, Patterson said finally. The emergency removal order is stayed pending a full hearing. Temporary guardianship is granted to Rex Calloway under the following conditions: monthly home visits by an independent social worker, proof of school enrollment within 2 weeks, and mandatory therapy for the minor. Full custody hearing will be scheduled in 30 days. Anderson stood. Your Honor, my ruling stands. This court is adjourned. The gavel fell. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then the courtroom erupted. Rex pulled Ethan into a fierce hug. Sarah was crying. The bikers were cheering so loud the bailiff had to threaten to clear the room. Marcus was grinning. We won. Holy shit, we actually won. This is temporary, Anderson said coldly, gathering her papers. The full hearing is a different story. We'll be ready, Marcus replied. Holloway stormed out without a word, his face purple with rage. Jennifer Park caught Ethan in the hallway, her camera crew trailing. Ethan, how do you feel? Ethan looked at her, at the cameras, at the world watching. I feel seen, he said simply. For the first time in years, I feel seen. Outside the courthouse, 200 Hells Angels waited on their motorcycles. When Ethan emerged with Rex and Sarah, they started their engines in unison. The roar was deafening, a salute, a celebration, a promise. Ethan climbed onto the back of Rex's bike, holding tight as they rode through the streets of the town that had once ignored him. But nobody was ignoring him now. And as the wind whipped through his hair and the sun rose over the Montana mountains, Ethan Cole realized something profound. He'd spent 3 years surviving. But now he was finally learning how to live. The victory lasted exactly 4 days. On the 5th morning, Ethan woke to find Rex sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a letter with an expression Ethan had never seen before. Not anger, not fear, something worse. Defeat. What is it? Ethan asked, his stomach already twisting. Rex looked up. His eyes were hollow. They're appealing Patterson's ruling. State Attorney's Office filed this morning. They want an immediate stay on the guardianship pending review by a higher court. Sarah appeared in this doorway already dressed. Marcus called. The appeal goes before Judge Hendricks in Missoula. Today, 2 p.m. Can they do that? Ethan's voice cracked. Can they just ignore what Patterson said? They're not ignoring it. They're challenging it. Rex stood his chair, scraping loud against the floor. And Hendricks is known for ruling in favor of the state, especially in custody cases. So what do? We fight, again. But Rex's voice lacked conviction. The drive to Missoula took 3 hours. Ethan sat in the back of Rex's truck, watching Montana landscape blur past, feeling the walls closing in again. 4 days. He'd had 4 days of belonging, of being seen, of believing things could be different. Now it was all slipping away. Talk to me, kid, Rex said from the front seat. What's going on in your head? I knew it was too good to be true. Don't say that. Why not? It's what I've been thinking since the moment Patterson made his ruling. Ethan's hands clenched. People like me don't get happy endings, Rex. We get temporary reprieves. And then the system pulls us back in. Sarah turned in her seat. You're not going back. We won't let that happen. You might not have a choice. The words hung heavy in the truck. Rex's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Because they all knew Ethan was right. If Hendricks ruled against them, there was nothing they could do. No amount of fighting, no number of bikers, no passionate speeches would override a court order. They arrived at the courthouse with 30 minutes to spare. Marcus was already there, looking tired. Tell me something good, Rex said. Marcus shook his head. Hendricks is exactly what we feared. Conservative, by the book. Believes children belong in the system until proven otherwise. He looked at Ethan. I'm sorry, kid. This one's going to be uphill. Then we climb, Ethan said, surprised by the steadiness in his own voice. What else can we do? The courtroom was smaller than Patterson's, more intimate, which somehow made it worse. There was nowhere to hide from Judge Hendricks' scrutiny. She was in her 60s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd heard every lie and excuse in the book. Mr. Chen, she said without preamble, I've reviewed the case file. The state contends that Judge Patterson's ruling was premature and failed to adequately consider the minor's best interests. Your response, Marcus stood. Your Honor, Judge Patterson heard extensive testimony. He reviewed evidence. He made an informed decision based on the facts presented. The state argues those facts were incomplete, that Mr. Calloway's criminal history wasn't adequately explored. Mr. Calloway's record is relevant only if it poses a risk to the minor. We've demonstrated it doesn't. Anderson stood. Your Honor, Rex Calloway has multiple arrests for assault weapons charges in association with known criminal enterprises. The Hells Angels are designated as an outlaw motorcycle gang by federal authorities. Placing a vulnerable minor in that environment is negligent at best. The arrests you're citing are 15 years old, Marcus countered. Mr. Calloway hasn't had so much as a traffic ticket in over a decade. And the criminal enterprise designation is law enforcement profiling, not proof of current illegal activity. Hendricks held up a hand. Gentlemen, I'm not interested in rehashing old arguments. My concern is singular: what is in the best interest of this child? Staying with the people who actually care about him, Marcus said. The people who gave him food when he was starving medical care, when he was sick, and protection when he was being harassed. The people who should have provided those things are the state, Anderson shot back. And they're prepared to do so now. Now, Marcus's voice rose. After 3 years of failure, after documented abuse in foster care, after a caseworker ignored his pleas for help, the state wants credit for doing their job only after being publicly shamed. That's enough, Hendricks said sharply. I want to hear from the minor. Ethan Cole approached the bench. Ethan stood on legs that felt like water. He walked forward, aware of every eye in the room watching him. Son, I've read your testimony. I've seen the interview you gave. I understand you've been through significant trauma. Hendricks's voice softened slightly. But I need you to understand something. The state's job is to protect children. Sometimes that means making decisions children don't like. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. You say you feel safe with Mr. Calloway. But safety isn't just about feeling protected in the moment. It's about long-term stability, structure, a proper home environment. She paused. Can a motorcycle club provide that? Ethan thought about the past 4 days, about Wrench teaching him to change oil on a Harley, about Doc checking his shoulder every morning, about Sarah making him breakfast and asking about his nightmares, about Rex sitting with him at midnight when he couldn't sleep, just talking about nothing and everything. They already have, Ethan said quietly. In 4 days, they've given me more stability than I had in 3 years on the streets, more structure than any foster home ever did, more everything. But what happens when the novelty wears off, when you're no longer the kid who saved their brother, when you're just another mouth to feed, another responsibility? The question hit like a punch. I don't know, Ethan admitted, but I know what happens if I go back into the system. I've lived it, I've survived it, and I'm not doing it again. That may not be your choice to make. Then the system is broken. Ethan met her eyes. Because I'm 17 years old. In 8 months, I'm a legal adult. And the second I am, I'm walking right back to that clubhouse. So you can force me into foster care for 8 months. You can pretend you're protecting me. But all you're really doing is wasting time and breaking something that actually works. Hendricks was quiet for a long moment. You're very articulate for someone who's been out of school for 3 years. I read a lot. Public library doesn't care if you're homeless. What do you want to do with your life, Ethan? The question caught him off guard. I don't know. You have dreams, goals. Ethan thought about the past 4 days, about Marcus from the shelter asking if the fight had mattered, about Riley saying there was no justice for people like them. I want to help kids like me, he said slowly. Kids who fall through the cracks, kids that the system forgets. I want to make sure they're not invisible. Something shifted in Hendricks's expression. That's a worthy goal. Then let me pursue it, with the people who showed me I was worth saving. Hendricks sat back. Return to your seat. Ethan walked back to Rex, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might explode. You did good, Rex whispered. Did I do enough? Rex had no answer. Hendricks reviewed her notes in silence. The courtroom was so quiet Ethan could hear his own breathing. Here's what troubles me, she said finally. The state failed this child, catastrophically. That's clear from the record. But the solution to state failure isn't to hand a minor over to a motorcycle club with no oversight. Marcus started to stand, but Hendricks waved him down. However, she continued, I'm also troubled by the state's sudden interest in Ethan's welfare. Where was this concern 3 years ago? Where was it when he was living under a bridge in January? Where was it when Deputy Holloway was harassing him? Anderson's expression tightened. Judge Patterson's ruling, while unorthodox, was not without merit. This child clearly has a relationship with the Calloway family. Severing that relationship abruptly would cause additional trauma. Hendricks looked directly at Ethan. But I'm not convinced temporary guardianship is sufficient. Ethan's chest tightened. This was it. She was going to rule against them. Therefore, I'm ordering the following. Rex Calloway's temporary guardianship is extended for 6 months, during which time he and his wife will complete parenting classes, undergo background checks, and submit to monthly home visits by an independent social worker. Ethan will be enrolled in school within 2 weeks and will attend mandatory therapy sessions twice monthly. If at the end of 6 months the reports are positive and Ethan remains stable, I will consider making the guardianship permanent. The courtroom erupted. Marcus was grinning. Sarah was crying. The bikers in the gallery were cheering, but Anderson was on her feet. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. My courtroom, my rules counselor. The state had 3 years to get this right. They failed. I'm giving Mr. Calloway 6 months to prove he can do better. Hendricks banged her gavel. We're adjourned. Ethan couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what had just happened. 6 months, not permanent, not safe, but 6 months. Rex pulled him into a hug so tight Ethan's ribs creaked. We'll take it. We'll take every day they give us, and then we'll prove them all wrong. Outside the courthouse, the bikers were already celebrating. Diesel was on the phone spreading the news. Wrench was planning a party. The roar of engines filled the air, but Ethan felt strangely hollow. What's wrong? Sarah asked, pulling him aside. We won. For 6 months, and then what? Another hearing, another judge, another fight. Then we fight again, as many times as it takes. I'm tired of fighting. Sarah's expression softened. I know, honey, I know, but this is how it works. You don't win wars in a day, you win them in inches, and today we gained 6 months. That's not nothing. It doesn't feel like enough. It's not supposed to, but it's what we've got, so we make it count. The drive back to the clubhouse was quieter than the drive out. Ethan stared out the window, watching the sun set over the mountains, feeling the weight of 6 months pressing down on him. 6 months to prove he was worth keeping. 6 months to be perfect. 6 months to not screw up. Stop, Rex said from the front seat. Ethan looked up. What? Stop doing whatever you're doing in your head. I can hear you thinking from here. You're putting pressure on yourself, thinking you have to be perfect, thinking one mistake will cost you everything. Rex glanced in the rearview mirror. That's not how this works, kid. You're allowed to mess up. You're allowed to be human. Not according to Judge Hendricks. Hendricks said stable, not perfect. There's a difference. Rex's voice was firm. You're going to have bad days. You're going to struggle. You're going to make mistakes. That's called being 17. And we're going to be there for all of it. What if the social worker decides I'm not stable enough? What if the therapy doesn't work? What if the sky falls tomorrow? Sarah interrupted. What if aliens invade? What if I decide to dye my hair purple? She turned in her seat. You can what if yourself into a panic attack, or you can focus on what you can control. School, therapy, showing up every day. Let us worry about the rest. Ethan wanted to believe her, wanted to let go of the fear gnawing at his insides. But 3 years on the streets had taught him that hope was dangerous, that believing in good things only made it hurt worse when they were taken away. They arrived at the clubhouse to find it packed. Someone had strung up lights, someone else had brought enough food to feed an army. Music was playing, people were laughing, and in the center of it all, a handmade banner read, Welcome home, Ethan. Ethan stopped in the doorway staring. Surprised, Diesel said, grinning. Figured you deserved a proper celebration. This is too much. This is exactly enough. Wrench handed him a soda. Now get in here and let us embarrass you with affection. The party was overwhelming in the best way. Bikers who'd barely spoken to Ethan before came up to congratulate him, to share their own stories of fighting the system, to promise their support. Doc pulled him aside at one point. I know this is scary, the uncertainty, the conditional approval. But here's what you need to remember, you're not alone anymore. Whatever happens in 6 months, you've got 200 brothers who will move heaven and earth to keep you safe. Why? Ethan asked for the 1,000th time. Why do you all care so much? Doc smiled. Because we know what it's like to be written off. to have everyone expect the worst. And we know what it's like when someone sees past that and gives you a chance. Rex gave us that. Now we're giving it to you. Around midnight, when the party had quieted and most of the bikers had left, Ethan found Rex sitting alone on the back porch. "You okay?" Rex asked as Ethan sat beside him. "I don't know. I feel like I should be happier. We won, but all I can think about is the 6-month deadline." "That's normal. You've been conditioned to expect the worst. It's going to take time to undo that. What if I can't? Then you can't, but you keep trying anyway." Rex was quiet for a moment. "You know what I learned when I was in your shoes, that healing isn't linear. You don't wake up one day magically fixed. You have good days and bad days, progress and setbacks, and that's okay." "Is it?" Ethan's voice broke. "Because I feel like one bad day could cost me everything." "It won't. I promise you it won't." Rex turned to face him. "Look at me, kid. You could burn down this entire clubhouse tomorrow, and I'd still fight for you. You could fail every class, skip therapy, break every rule, and I'd still be here. Because that's what family does. We don't give up when things get hard." "How can you promise that you barely know me?" "I know enough. I know you're brave. I know you're kind. I know you jumped into a freezing river to save a stranger. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." Rex put his hand on Ethan's shoulder. "And I know that 20 years ago someone made the same promise to me, and they kept it. Even when I didn't deserve it, even when I pushed them away, they stayed. So now I'm staying for you." Ethan's vision blurred. "I'm scared." "I know. But fear doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. And humans were stronger together than we ever are alone." The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm Ethan had never experienced before. Structure without suffocation. Rules without cruelty. Accountability without punishment. Sarah enrolled him in the local high school. His first day back in a classroom after 3 years was terrifying, but the teachers were patient, gave him time to catch up, didn't treat him like a lost cause. Therapy was harder. Talking about his mother's death, the foster system, the streets it ripped open, wounds he tried to seal shut. But his therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Martinez, never pushed, just created space for him to hurt and heal at his own pace. The social worker visits were the worst. A stern woman named Carol who looked at the clubhouse like it might explode at any moment, who asked invasive questions and took endless notes. But even she couldn't deny the evidence. Ethan was gaining weight. His shoulder was healing. His grades, while not perfect, were improving. And every time she asked if he felt safe, he answered honestly yes. 3 months and something unexpected happened. Marcus from the shelter called. Then Riley. Then 3 other kids Ethan had known from the streets. All of them asking the same question, could the Hells Angels help them who? Rex and Sarah sat with Ethan at the kitchen table discussing it. "We can't take in every homeless kid in Montana," Sarah said gently. "We don't have the resources or the legal authority. But we could do something," Rex said slowly. "Start a foundation, fund shelters, provide resources, make sure kids have options besides the streets." Ethan looked up. "You'd do that? Why not? We've got the manpower, the connections, and now, thanks to your interview, we've got public support." Rex smiled. "People want to help. They just need to know how." Within 2 weeks, they'd filed the paperwork for a nonprofit called the River Ghost Project, named after the kid who disappeared into the water to save a life and emerged as something more. The foundation's mission was simple: provide emergency shelter, food, and support for homeless youth. No judgment, no conditions, just safety. The first donation came from an unexpected source, Judge Patterson. $1,000 with a note that read, "For giving an old judge a chance to do the right thing." More donations followed. Small amounts from individuals who'd seen Ethan's interview. Larger amounts from organizations that believed in the cause. Within 3 months, they'd raised enough to open the first shelter. Ethan cut the ribbon on opening day, surrounded by bikers and former street kids and reporters documenting it all. "This is for everyone who was told they didn't matter," he said into the microphone, his voice steady. "For everyone who was invisible. You matter, you're seen, and you're not alone." The shelter filled within a week. Kids who had been living under bridges in abandoned buildings in their cars, they came. And the Hells Angels showed up too, teaching job skills, providing mentorship, proving that family could be built, not born. The 6-month deadline approached faster than Ethan expected. Carol's final report was submitted. The full custody hearing was scheduled. "How do you feel?" Dr. Martinez asked during their session the week before. "Terrified," Ethan admitted, "but also hopeful. Is that stupid? It's human. You've built something real here, with Rex and Sarah, with the club, with yourself. That's worth fighting for." "What if the judge doesn't see it that way?" "Then you fight harder." "But Ethan, I think you've already won. You just haven't realized it yet." The final hearing was nothing like the first. Judge Hendricks reviewed Carol's reports, read Dr. Martinez's assessment, looked at Ethan's school transcripts. Then she asked one question. "Ethan Cole, do you still want to stay with the Calloway family?" "Yes, ma'am, more than anything." "Mr. and Mrs. Calloway, are you prepared to take permanent guardianship of this young man to support him through his final year as a minor and beyond?" Rex and Sarah stood together. "Yes, Your Honor." Hendricks nodded. "Then it's settled. Guardianship is made permanent. Ethan Cole is officially under the care of Rex and Sarah Calloway until he reaches age 18, at which point he may choose his own path." She looked at Ethan. "Congratulations, son. You've earned this." The gavel fell, and this time the victory was real. Permanent, unshakable. Ethan graduated high school a year later with the entire Hells Angels Club in attendance, their leather vests a stark contrast to the sea of proud parents. His mother's repaired necklace hung around his neck as he walked across the stage. In his valedictorian speech, he talked about invisibility, about the kids who fell through cracks, about the family he'd found in the most unexpected place. "I was nobody," he said to the packed auditorium. "A homeless kid everyone ignored. But one night I made a choice. I jumped when nobody else would, and that choice changed everything. Not because I became a hero, but because someone saw my choice and decided I was worth saving back." He looked at Rex and Sarah in the front row, both of them crying openly. "The River Goes Project has helped over 200 kids in the past year. We've provided shelter, food, education, and hope. But more than that, we've proven something important, that broken people can heal each other. That family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. It's about jumping when nobody else will." The applause was deafening. After the ceremony, as Ethan stood surrounded by bikers and former street kids and the family he'd built from broken pieces, someone asked him what came next. Ethan looked at Rex, who nodded. "College, social work degree, and then I'm coming back here to run the foundation full time, to make sure no kid ever has to choose between abuse and the streets." "That's a hell of a mission," Diesel said. "I learned from the best." Ethan grinned. "You guys taught me that when you see someone drowning, you jump. Every time. No exceptions." Rex pulled him into a hug. "Your mom would be proud, kid." "Yeah," Ethan whispered. "I think she would." 5 years later, the River Ghost Project operated shelters in 12 cities across Montana and Wyoming, funded by donations and staffed by volunteers. Many of them former Hells Angels who'd found purpose in protecting the forgotten. Ethan Cole, now 22, and holding a master's degree in social work, stood in front of a Senate committee testifying about foster care reform. "The system doesn't need more money," he told the assembled senators. "It needs accountability. It needs people who see children as human beings, not case files. It needs to understand that sometimes the scariest looking people are the ones most willing to save a life." The testimony went viral, led to policy changes, to investigations into corrupt officials. Deputy Frank Holloway was one of them. Forced into early retirement after an ethics investigation revealed a decade of abuse toward homeless minors. He never apologized, but he also never hurt another kid again. Rex and Sarah attended Ethan's wedding 3 years after that. Watched him marry a woman he'd met in grad school who shared his passion for helping forgotten kids. At the reception, Rex stood to give a toast. 7 years ago, a skinny, homeless kid jumped into a freezing river and pulled me out. I thought he saved my life that night. But I was wrong. Rex's voice was rough with emotion. He didn't just save my life. He gave it meaning. Reminded me why we fight, why we protect, why we show up for people everyone else has written off. He raised his glass. To Ethan, the boy nobody saw who taught us all how to really look. The room erupted in cheers. And Ethan stood there, no longer invisible, no longer forgotten, no longer alone, and finally understood what his mother had meant all those years ago. He'd survived, but more than that, he'd learned to live. And in the process, he'd taught broken men How to Love Again transformed a motorcycle club into an army of protectors and built a legacy that would outlast them all. Because sometimes the people society fears most are the ones willing to jump when everyone else just watches. And sometimes the invisible boy everyone ignores becomes the reason the world learns to see. That was Ethan Cole's story, and it was just beginning.